When a billionaire CEO froze at a battered food truck window, recognizing the woman he'd abandoned 12 years ago, he had no idea she'd already built an empire from scraps. Without him. Emma Brooks didn't need rescuing. She needed answers. And Ryan Bennett was about to discover that some debts can't be paid with money. Before we dive into this story, I want to ask you something. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy what you hear today, hit that like button. It genuinely helps. Now, let's get into it. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 8:30. Ryan Bennett had exactly 47 minutes to cross Manhattan, and he was stuck in traffic on Fifth Avenue watching brake lights blur into an endless red smear through the rain. His phone buzzed for the 14th time. His assistant, again. He ignored it. "Sir?" The driver glanced in the rearview mirror. "We could take—" "I see it." Ryan rubbed his temples. The headache had started during breakfast when his daughter informed him, with the casual cruelty only a 7-year-old could muster, that he'd missed her school concert last night. He'd been in Boston, or Philadelphia. He honestly couldn't remember anymore. The cities all looked the same from hotel windows. His phone lit up again. This time it was Marcus, his COO, with a message that was just 3 words. "Where are you?" Ryan typed back, "Stuck. Start without me." The response was immediate. "The investors want you." Of course they did. They always wanted him. That's what happened when you built a company worth $8 billion before your 33rd birthday. Everyone wanted a piece of you until there was nothing left to give. "There's a spot up here," the driver said, pulling toward the curb. "Coffee shop, maybe? You could walk the rest." "Fine. Whatever." Ryan stepped out into the drizzle, tugging his collar up against the cold. November in New York was miserable, the kind of damp that worked its way into your bones and stayed there. He checked his watch. 42 minutes. The coffee shop his driver had pointed to was actually a food truck, one of those weathered aluminum boxes that looked like it had survived several decades and possibly a minor war. Someone had painted the word "Golden Crust" across the side in yellow letters that were peeling at the edges. It was the only thing open on the block. Ryan joined the short line, pulling out his phone to scan the email Marcus had forwarded. Projections for Q4. Revenue targets. The usual corporate noise that used to excite him, and now just felt like static. Coffee, black, large. He didn't look up from his screen when he reached the window. And whatever pastry moves fastest. There was a pause. Then a voice he hadn't heard in 12 years said, "Cream cheese or butter?" Every muscle in Ryan's body locked. He knew that voice the way he knew his own heartbeat, intimately, automatically, in a way that bypassed thought entirely and went straight to muscle memory. Slowly, he lowered his phone. Emma Brooks stood behind the scratched plexiglass window, holding a coffee pot in one hand and wearing an expression he couldn't quite read. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and there was a smudge of flour on her cheek. She looked exactly the same. She looked completely different. Ryan. She said his name like she was testing the weight of it. "Emma." His throat felt like sandpaper. Behind him, someone coughed impatiently. Ryan didn't move. "You gonna order or what?" a guy in a construction vest called from the back of the line. Emma blinked, and whatever had been on her face disappeared behind a practiced smile. "Cream cheese or butter?" she repeated. Ryan's brain had apparently stopped working. "Butter, I guess." "You guess?" For just a second, something sharp flashed in her eyes. "Some things never change." She turned away before he could respond, moving to the coffee maker with quick, efficient movements. Ryan watched her hands, the same hands that used to trace patterns on his chest in the dark, the same hands that had shoved him away the last time they spoke. $4.75, she said, sliding the coffee and a wrapped bagel across the counter. Ryan pulled out his wallet, fumbling with the bills. His hands were shaking. When had his hands started shaking? "Keep it," he managed, pushing a 20 through the window. Emma stared at the bill, then at him. "I don't need your charity, Ryan. It's not— I didn't mean— Next customer," she said loudly, looking past him. Ryan stood there like an idiot while the construction worker elbowed past him to order. He should leave. He had a meeting. He had investors waiting. He had approximately 38 minutes to get across town and save a deal that would determine whether his company survived the next quarter. Instead, he walked to the edge of the curb and stood there in the rain, holding coffee he didn't want and a bagel he wouldn't eat. When the lunch rush started, he was still standing there. Emma had learned a long time ago that crying in front of customers was bad for business. So she didn't cry when Ryan Bennett, billionaire, tech genius, and the man who'd promised her forever in a parking lot in Ohio 12 years ago, walked away from her truck without looking back. She didn't cry when she burned a batch of bacon because her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She didn't cry when Jenny, her part-time helper, asked who that guy was, and Emma had to pretend she didn't know. She held it together through 47 sandwich orders, 3 coffee spills, and a near fistfight between 2 bankers arguing over the last turkey club. It wasn't until 2 in the afternoon, when the crowd finally thinned and Jenny left for her second job, that Emma allowed herself to sit down on the milk crate behind the truck and put her head in her hands. "You good?" Emma's head snapped up. Ryan was standing 5 feet away, soaked from the rain, still holding the coffee cup she'd given him 4 hours ago. "Are you kidding me right now?" She stood up so fast the milk crate clattered over. "Go away. I need to talk to you." "Yeah, well, I needed to talk to you about 12 years ago. Guess we're both disappointed." Ryan flinched, and some petty part of her was glad. He looked uncomfortable standing there in his expensive coat that probably cost more than her truck was worth. Good. He should be uncomfortable. "Emma, please, what do you want?" She crossed her arms. "Actually, don't answer that. I don't care what you want. I'm busy." "You're sitting on a milk crate." "I'm taking a break, which I'm allowed to do, on my property." She gestured at the truck. "So unless you're ordering something, I want to hire you." Emma stopped mid-sentence. "Excuse me?" "Bennett Technologies is opening a new campus in Brooklyn. We're building a food hall, full restaurant setup, high-end equipment, contracts with local vendors." Ryan spoke faster now, like he was pitching to investors. "I want Golden Crust to be part of it." For a long moment, Emma just stared at him. Then she started laughing. It wasn't a nice laugh. It was the kind of laugh that came from somewhere dark and jagged, the kind that hurt on the way out. "Oh my God," she gasped, pressing a hand to her stomach. "Oh my God, you're serious." "Emma, let me get this straight." She wiped her eyes. "You show up here after 12 years of complete silence. 12 years, Ryan. No calls, no emails, nothing. And your first conversation with me is a business proposal? I'm trying to help you." "Help me?" Her voice rose. "I don't need your help. I've been doing just fine without you." Ryan looked at the dented truck, the rusted wheel wells, the duct tape holding together the serving window. He didn't say anything, but his face said enough. Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Get out of here before I call the cops." "Just think about it." "I said go." Ryan held her gaze for 3 long seconds. Then he pulled out a business card and set it on the counter. "When you're ready to talk," he said quietly, and walked away. Emma waited until he turned the corner before she picked up the card. Ryan Bennett, CEO, Bennett Technologies. She should throw it away, should rip it into tiny pieces and scatter them in the gutter where they belonged. Instead, she slipped it into her pocket and went back to work. Ryan made it to the office 17 minutes late. The investors were not pleased. "Gentlemen," he said, striding into the conference room like he hadn't just sprinted 6 blocks in the rain. "Sorry for the delay. Let's talk numbers." Marcus shot him a look that clearly said we're discussing this later, but followed his lead, pulling up the quarterly projections on the screen. Ryan barely heard a word of it. He smiled at the right moments, nodded when people looked at him, asked a question about market penetration that seemed to satisfy everyone. But his brain was stuck on a food truck 5 miles away, on flour-dusted hands and eyes that looked at him like he was a stranger, which he supposed he was. "Ryan?" Marcus's voice cut through the fog. "Did you want to address the Brooklyn campus timeline?" "Right. The campus. The food hall. The completely insane offer he'd just made to his ex-girlfriend without consulting his board or his budget or his common sense. "The Brooklyn project is on schedule," Ryan said smoothly. "We're finalizing vendor contracts this week." That was news to Marcus, judging by the way his eyebrows shot up, but he didn't contradict him. The meeting dragged on for another 90 minutes. By the time the investors finally left, satisfied with whatever Ryan had apparently promised them, his headache had evolved into a full-scale migraine. "My office," Marcus said. "Now." Ryan followed him down the hall into the corner office that overlooked the East River. Marcus shut the door and leaned against his desk, arms crossed. "You want to tell me what that was about?" What was about? Don't play stupid. You show up late, soaking wet, and then announce we're finalizing vendor contracts for a food hall we haven't even started building yet. Ryan sank into the leather chair by the window. "We need local vendors for the Brooklyn campus." "I found one." "In the 47 minutes you were late to this meeting?" "I move fast." "Ryan," Marcus's voice softened. "Come on, man. What's going on?" They'd known each other since college. Marcus was the only person in the company who could call Ryan out on his bullshit, and right now, Ryan was grateful for it. He closed his eyes. "I saw Emma today." There was a long pause. "Emma?" Marcus repeated. "As in Ohio, Emma? The girl you, yeah, that Emma." "Where?" "She owns a food truck on Fifth Avenue." Marcus let out a low whistle. "And you offered her a restaurant contract?" "Yep. That's either the dumbest thing you've ever done or—" He stopped. "Actually, no. It's just the dumbest thing you've ever done. Thanks for the support." "Ryan, you haven't spoken to this woman in over a decade. You can't just throw money at her and expect what exactly? That she'll forgive you? That you'll pick up where you left off?" "I don't expect anything," Ryan said, but even he could hear how hollow that sounded. "I just want to help her." "Why?" Good question. Because he'd spent 12 years trying to forget her and failing? Because he still remembered the exact shade of her eyes in sunlight, the way she laughed at his terrible jokes, the sound of her voice saying, "I love you" in the dark? Because seeing her standing behind that food truck window, surviving in a city that chewed people up and spit them out, had reminded him of the person he used to be before money and power turned him into someone he barely recognized. "I don't know," Ryan said finally. Marcus sighed. "Look, if you want to bring her into the Brooklyn project, fine, but do it properly. Have legal draw up a legitimate contract. Make sure the board signs off. And for the love of God, keep it professional." "I will." "And Ryan?" Marcus moved toward the door. "Maybe ask yourself if you're doing this for her or for you." Emma's sister lived in a fourth-floor walk-up in Queens that smelled like cabbage and regret. Emma climbed the stairs slowly, her knees protesting after 14 hours on her feet. She could hear voices through the door, sitcom laughter, the bright, cheerful kind that felt like sandpaper on exhausted nerves. She knocked twice and let herself in. Lily was on the couch, her wheelchair parked beside it, a blanket draped over her legs. At 26, she looked younger than Emma remembered, though that might have been because she was wearing pajamas with cartoon cats on them. "You're late," Lily said without looking away from the TV. "Traffic." Emma dropped her bag by the door and headed for the kitchen. "You eat?" "Ordered Thai." "With what money?" "The money you gave me last week." Emma bit back a sigh. She'd given Lily that cash for physical therapy copays, not takeout, but arguing about it would just lead to another fight they'd had 100 times before. She poured herself a glass of water and leaned against the counter, watching her sister through the doorway. The accident had happened 8 years ago. A drunk driver running a red light, Lily's car T-boned at an intersection 2 blocks from their apartment. The doctor said she was lucky to be alive. Lily said luck had nothing to do with it. Emma had dropped out of culinary school 3 months before graduation to take care of her. No regrets. That's what you did for family. Most days she believed it. "There's leftover pad thai in the fridge," Lily called. "Thanks." Emma wasn't hungry, but she grabbed the container anyway and sat down at the kitchen table. Ryan's business card was still in her pocket. She pulled it out, turning it over in her fingers. The smart thing to do was throw it away, cut ties, move on, forget he existed. But Emma had stopped doing the smart thing a long time ago. She pulled out her phone and typed a message before she could talk herself out of it. "This is Emma Brooks. I'll meet you. Wednesday, 2 p.m. Come alone." She hit send and immediately wanted to throw her phone across the room. What was she doing? Her phone buzzed 30 seconds later. "I'll be there." Ryan. Emma stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Who are you texting? Lily called from the living room. Nobody, Emma said, and shoved the phone back in her pocket. Wednesday arrived with freezing rain and a broken heating element in the truck. Emma spent the morning wrapped in 2 sweaters and a parka, her breath fogging in the cramped space as she prepped sandwiches with numb fingers. By noon, she'd made exactly $43 and lost all feeling in her toes. At 1:50, she sent Jenny home early and locked up the truck. Ryan arrived at exactly 2 o'clock. He was dressed down today, jeans, a dark sweater, a jacket that looked warm but not obnoxiously expensive. Like he was trying to blend in. It didn't work. Everything about him screamed money, from the way he carried himself to the watch on his wrist that probably cost more than her rent. Emma! He stopped a few feet from the truck. Thanks for meeting me. I haven't agreed to anything yet. I know. I just want to talk. Emma gestured to the milk crate she'd set out. Ryan looked at it, then at her. I'm not sitting on a milk crate in the rain, he said. Then I guess we're done here. For a second she thought he'd actually leave. Then he sighed, lowered himself onto the crate, and looked up at her expectantly. Emma almost smiled. Almost. So, she said, let's hear it. Your big proposal. Ryan pulled out a tablet from his jacket. Bennett Technologies is opening a 20-acre campus in Brooklyn. State-of-the-art facilities, research labs, office space for about 3,000 employees. We're building an on-site food hall to keep people fed without leaving campus. I want Golden Crust to anchor it. He swiped through images on the screen, architectural renderings of a massive glass and steel complex, interior shots of what looked like a high-end food court, floor plans marked with vendor spaces. Emma's stomach tightened. That's a multi-million-dollar project. About $80 million for the campus. The food hall is 12. And you want my food truck. I want your restaurant, Ryan corrected. Full kitchen, seating for 150, premium location, 5-year lease with an option to extend. We'll handle the build-out costs. You bring the recipes and the brand. It was insane. It was also exactly what she dreamed about before life forced her to dream smaller. Emma crossed her arms. What's the catch? No catch. There's always a catch. Ryan met her eyes. You'd be competing against 15 other vendors for customer traffic. If your food isn't good enough, you fail. That's the only catch. And if I succeed, then you build something bigger than this truck. Emma looked at the Golden Crust logo someone had spray-painted on the side 10 years ago, at the duct tape holding the window together, at the rust creeping up from the wheel wells. This truck was everything she had. It represented every sacrifice she'd made, every dollar she'd scraped together, every frozen winter morning she'd dragged herself out of bed to keep going. It was also falling apart. I need to see the contract, she said finally. Of course. Ryan pulled out his phone. I'll have legal send it over today, and I want my own lawyer to review it. Absolutely. And I want it in writing that this has nothing to do with... She gestured between them. Whatever this is, something flickered across Ryan's face. This is business, Emma. I'm offering you a legitimate opportunity because you're talented and your food is good. That's all. Right. She didn't believe him, but it didn't matter. Send me the paperwork. Ryan stood, brushing rain off his jeans. Can I ask you something? Depends on the question. Why did you stay in New York? You always talked about Paris, about that culinary program at Le Cordon Bleu. What happened? Emma's jaw tightened. Life happened. Family happened. Reality happened. Your sister. She hadn't mentioned Lily, but of course he knew. Ryan had probably Googled her the second he left here on Monday. Probably knew everything about her life. The accident, the dropped scholarship, the years of struggling to stay afloat. Don't, she said quietly. Don't what? Don't look at me like that, like I'm some tragic story you need to fix. Ryan's expression shuddered. That's not what I'm doing. Isn't it? Emma stepped closer. You show up here after 12 years with your money and your fancy contract, acting like you're doing me a favor. But we both know this is about you, Ryan. This is about you feeling guilty for... She stopped. Ryan's voice was low. For what? Forget it. No, say it. For what, Emma? For leaving. The words burst out before she could stop them. For choosing your company over us. For disappearing without looking back. I didn't... Ryan's hands clenched. You told me to go. Because you wanted to. You were already halfway out the door, Ryan. I just gave you permission. They stood there in the rain, 12 years of unspoken hurt sitting between them like a third person. Finally, Ryan exhaled. I'll send you the contract, he said quietly, and walked away. This time, Emma didn't watch him go. The contract arrived on Friday. It was 73 pages long and written in the kind of legal language that made Emma's head hurt. She spent the weekend reading through it twice, making notes in the margins, highlighting sections that confused her. On Monday, she took it to the only lawyer she knew, David Chen, who'd helped her set up the food truck's business license 5 years ago and had been asking her out ever since. This is legitimate, David said, looking up from the papers spread across his desk. Very legitimate. The terms are actually generous. 5-year lease, fixed rent with no increases. They're covering all build-out and equipment costs. You retain full creative control over the menu. Emma, this is a good deal. Too good. Maybe. David leaned back in his chair. Or maybe someone really believes in your food. That happens sometimes. Not to me. Why not to you? Because people like her didn't get opportunities like this. Because she'd learned a long time ago that when something looked too good to be true, it usually was. Because the man offering her this deal had broken her heart so thoroughly, she'd spent 12 years building walls to keep anyone from getting close enough to do it again. Just tell me if I should sign it, Emma said. David tapped his pen against the desk. From a legal standpoint, yes. The contract protects you. You can walk away if they violate any terms, and there's a buyout clause if things go south. Financially, it's a massive opportunity. But I'm not your lawyer right now. I'm your friend. He leaned forward. Is this really about the contract, or is this about Ryan Bennett? Emma looked out the window at the gray New York skyline. I don't know. Then figure it out before you sign anything. Said. Emma didn't sign the contract that week, or the next week, or the week after that. Ryan didn't push. He didn't show up at her truck, or call, or send follow-up emails. He just let the offer sit there like a bomb waiting to go off. December arrived with the kind of cold that turned the city mean. Emma's heating element gave out completely, forcing her to work in temperatures that made her fingers ache and her breath come out in white clouds. She lost customers. People didn't want to stand in line for coffee when the wind chill was below zero. By the second week of December, she was running at a loss. Lily's medical bills were due on the 15th. Rent was due on the 1st. Emma had exactly $1,700 in her checking account and about $300 in cash hidden in an envelope under her mattress. The math wasn't hard. She pulled out Ryan's contract at midnight on a Tuesday, sitting at her kitchen table with the numbers spread out in front of her. If she signed, she'd have a steady income. Health insurance, a real kitchen with equipment that worked, room to grow, room to breathe, room to finally build the things she'd been dreaming about since she was 19 years old. If she didn't sign, she'd probably lose the truck by February. Emma stared at the signature line for 20 minutes. Then she picked up a pen and signed her name. The lawyers processed the paperwork in 3 days. By Friday afternoon, Emma Brooks officially had a restaurant space at the Bennett Technologies Brooklyn campus, scheduled to open in 8 months. She should have felt excited. Instead, she felt like she'd just made a deal with the devil. Ryan called her that evening. She let it go to voicemail. Emma, it's Ryan. I just heard from legal that you signed. I want you to know this is going to be great. You deserve this. Call me when you're ready to talk about next steps. She deleted the message without responding. Saturday morning, she opened the truck at 6 a.m. like always, even though the temperature was hovering around 15 degrees, and her hands were so cold she could barely grip the coffee pot. 3 customers showed up all morning. Emma was cleaning the griddle when someone knocked on the service window. She looked up, expecting a delivery guy. It was Ryan, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing an expression she couldn't read. We need to talk, he said. Emma wanted to tell him to leave, wanted to say she'd changed her mind, that she was backing out of the contract, that she didn't need his charity or his guilt or whatever this was. Instead, she unlocked the door and let him in. The inside of the truck was cramped with both of them in it. Ryan had to duck his head to keep from hitting the ceiling, and his shoulders nearly touched both walls. Cozy, he said. It's all I've got. I know. He handed her one of the coffee cups. That's why we need to talk about the timeline. 8 months isn't enough. Emma frowned. The contract says, I know what the contract says, I'm changing it. We're going to need at least 12 months for build-out, maybe 14. The architects are redesigning the whole food hall layout to give you more space. Ryan, I didn't ask for... I know. I'm doing it anyway. He took a sip of his coffee, not meeting her eyes. I also talked to the head of HR about hiring. You're going to need a full staff, kitchen crew, servers, maybe a manager, so you're not working 80-hour weeks. We can pull from the local culinary programs, get you people who actually know what they're doing. Emma set down her coffee cup. Why are you doing this? Because it's good business. Bullshit. Ryan's jaw tightened. Excuse me? You heard me. This isn't about business, Ryan. You're not investing $12 million in a food hall because you think my sandwiches are going to bring in revenue. So tell me the truth. Why are you really doing this? For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he said, Because I owe you. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. His voice was rough. 12 years ago, you asked me to stay. And I left. I chose the startup over you, over us, and I've regretted it every single day since. Emma felt something crack open in her chest. Don't. Don't what? Don't make this about us. There is no us, Ryan. There hasn't been for 12 years. I know that. Do you? She stepped closer, anger flaring hot and sudden. Because it feels like you're trying to buy forgiveness. Like if you throw enough money at me, I'll forget what you did. That's not... I loved you. The words came out jagged. I loved you so much it scared me, and you left anyway. You got on a plane to San Francisco, and you never looked back. I looked back, Ryan said quietly. I've never stopped looking back. Emma's throat tightened. Then why didn't you call? Why didn't you email or text or something, anything? Why did you just disappear? Because I thought it would be easier, for both of us. He ran a hand through his hair. I thought if we made a clean break, we could both move on, build new lives, be happy. And were you happy? Ryan looked at her, really looked at her, and Emma saw the answer in his eyes before he spoke. No, he said. Not really. The truck suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. Emma turned away, gripping the edge of the counter. You need to go. Emma. Please, her voice cracked. Just go. She heard him move toward the door, heard it open and let in a blast of freezing air. Then his voice, soft. I'm sorry for all of it. I know that doesn't change anything, but I need you to know that. The door closed. Emma waited until she heard his footsteps fade before she let herself cry. Emma didn't open the truck the next day, or the day after that. She told herself it was because of the cold, because the heating element was shot, and the forecast called for single digits all week. But the truth sat heavier than that. The truth was she couldn't stand behind that counter anymore, couldn't pour coffee and wrap sandwiches and pretend her hands weren't shaking. Ryan's apology had cracked something open that she'd spent years keeping sealed shut. By Wednesday, her phone was buzzing with messages from regulars asking if she was okay. Emma responded to exactly none of them. She stayed in her apartment, wore the same sweatpants for 3 days straight, and tried very hard not to think about anything at all. It was Lily who finally forced her out. You smell like depression, her sister announced, wheeling herself through Emma's front door without knocking. When's the last time you showered? How did you get here? Access a ride. Took 2 hours, but I was worried you died. Lily rolled into the kitchen and started opening cabinets. Please tell me you have something to eat besides crackers and self-loathing. Emma pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. I have peanut butter. Fantastic. We'll starve together. Lily wheeled back to the couch and parked herself directly in Emma's line of sight. You want to tell me what happened, or should I guess? Rich ex-boyfriend, business falling apart, existential crisis about wasting your life in a food truck? All of the above. Wow, overachiever. Lily grabbed the remote and muted the TV. Start talking. So Emma did. She told her about Ryan showing up at the truck, about the contract, about his apology, and the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious he'd lost and never stopped searching for. Lily listened without interrupting, which was how Emma knew it was bad. So let me get this straight, Lily said when she finished. This guy offers you everything you've ever wanted. A real restaurant, financial stability, a chance to actually use your degree that you dropped out of school to take care of me, and you're sitting here in 3-day-old sweatpants because why exactly? Because I don't trust it. Or you don't trust him. Same thing. Is it? Lily leaned forward. Emma, I love you. You're my sister and you gave up everything for me, and I'll never be able to repay that. But you need to stop punishing yourself. Emma's chest tightened. I'm not. Yes, you are. You've been punishing yourself for 8 years because you think the accident was somehow your fault. It wasn't. It was a drunk driver running a red light, and nothing you could have done would have changed that. If I hadn't asked you to pick me up that night, then I would have been somewhere else when it happened. Or it wouldn't have happened at all. Or it still would have, just differently. Lily's voice softened. You don't get to control everything, Em, and you don't get to use me as an excuse to keep yourself small. That's not what I'm doing, isn't it? You hide behind that truck like it's a shield. You work yourself half to death taking care of me. And yeah, I need help sometimes, but not as much as you think. You've built this whole life around sacrifice and struggle because it feels safer than actually wanting something. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. I'm scared. I know. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the things worth having are supposed to scare you. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the radiator clanking in the corner. Finally, Emma said, What if he leaves again? Then he leaves, and you'll survive it, same as you did before. Lily reached over and squeezed her hand. But what if he doesn't? What if this is real and you miss it because you're too afraid to try? Emma didn't have an answer for that. The phone call came 3 days later, just after midnight. Emma was half asleep when it buzzed, and she almost ignored it. Then she saw the name on the screen, Bennett Technologies. Not Ryan. His company. Her heart kicked into overdrive as she answered. Hello? Miss Brooks? A woman's voice, crisp and professional. This is Sarah Chen from Bennett Technologies' legal department. I'm sorry to call so late, but we have a situation. Emma sat up, suddenly wide awake. What kind of situation? There's been a complication with the Brooklyn campus project. The city rejected our building permits. We're going to need to redesign significant portions of the food hall, which means delays, potentially significant delays. How significant? We're looking at 18 to 24 months now instead of 12. Emma's stomach dropped. 2 years. She'd signed a contract banking on income in 12 months, and now they were telling her it might be 2 years before she saw a single dollar from this deal. Ms. Brooks, are you still there? Yeah, I'm here. Emma pressed her fingers to her temples. What does this mean for the contract? Nothing changes legally. The lease terms begin when the space is ready, not on a calendar date. But I wanted to inform you as soon as possible so you could plan accordingly. Plan accordingly. Right. Like she had the luxury of planning. Is there... Emma's throat felt tight. Is there any way to accelerate the timeline? We're doing everything we can. Mr. Bennett has made it a priority. Of course he had. Emma thanked Sarah and hung up, then sat in the dark, staring at nothing. 2 years. She couldn't keep the truck running for 2 years on fumes and hope. She was already bleeding money. By spring, she'd be drowning in debt. By summer, she'd be bankrupt. The smart thing to do was walk away from the contract now, cut her losses, find something else. Anything else. But Emma had never been particularly smart about the things she wanted. She pulled up her bank account on her phone. $1,743. Lily's PT appointments were $400 a month. Rent was $1,250. The truck lease was $300. Insurance, gas, supplies, utilities, it all added up to more than she had coming in. Emma did the math 3 times, hoping it would somehow change. It didn't. She was out of options. At 7 a.m., she texted Ryan, We need to talk, today if possible. The response came back in under a minute. My office, 10 a.m. I'll send a car. I can take the subway. Emma, let me send the car. She stared at the message, jaw tight. Even now, he was trying to take care of her. Even now, he thought money could fix everything. Fine. But we're talking business. Nothing else. Understood. The car arrived at 9:30, a sleek black sedan with a driver who held the door open and called her ma'am. Emma felt ridiculous climbing into the leather interior, wearing her usual jeans and food-stained jacket, But she hadn't exactly packed business casual when she'd fled Ohio 12 years ago with 2 suitcases and a broken heart. The Bennett Technologies headquarters occupied 3 floors of a glass tower in Midtown. Emma had walked past it 100 times without really seeing it. Now she stood in the lobby staring up at the soaring atrium, the polished marble floors, the reception desk that looked like it cost more than her entire yearly income. Ms. Brooks, a young woman in a tailored suit, appeared at her elbow. "I'm Maya, Mr. Bennett's assistant. He's expecting you." Emma followed her into an elevator that moved so smoothly she barely felt it. They rode up in silence to the 42nd floor, where the doors opened onto a reception area that looked like something from a magazine. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine." Maya led her down a hallway lined with abstract art that Emma didn't understand and probably couldn't afford to touch. At the end of the hall, she opened a door into an office that made Emma stop in her tracks. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, a desk the size of her kitchen, bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes and tech awards. And standing by the window with his back to her, wearing a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been born there, was Ryan. He turned when she entered. "Emma, thanks for coming. You didn't give me much choice. You could have said no." He gestured to the couch by the window. "Please, sit." Emma sat, mostly because standing felt like admitting she was nervous. Ryan settled into the chair across from her, and for a moment they just looked at each other. He looked tired, Emma realized. There were shadows under his eyes, and his jaw was tight in a way that suggested he'd been grinding his teeth. "I heard about the permits," Emma said finally. "News travels fast. Your lawyer called me at midnight." Ryan's expression darkened. "I told Sarah to wait until morning. She was trying to be helpful. She was trying to cover her ass." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Emma, I'm sorry. This is exactly the kind of complication I was trying to avoid. The city is being difficult about the rezoning, and it's going to push back our timeline significantly. 2 years. That's worst-case scenario. We might be able to get it done in 18 months if—" "Ryan," Emma cut him off. "I can't wait 2 years." He went very still. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm broke. The truck is barely making money. I've got maybe 3 months before I have to shut down completely." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "I can't afford to wait for your campus to open." Ryan's jaw worked. "Then let me help you." "No." "Emma." "I said no. I'm not taking your money." "It's not charity. It's a bridge loan. You're already contracted with us. Consider it an advance on future earnings. An advance I might never be able to pay back if this whole thing falls apart." "It's not going to fall apart." "You don't know that." Emma's voice rose. "You're sitting here in your corner office making promises, but you don't actually know what's going to happen. The permits could take 3 years. The city could reject the whole project. Your board could decide the food hall isn't worth it and pull funding. And then where does that leave me? In debt to you with nothing to show for it." Ryan stood abruptly and walked to the window, his shoulders rigid. For a long moment he didn't speak. Then he said, "What do you want me to do, Emma?" "I want you to be honest with me, not as a CEO, not as someone trying to fix things, just honest." He turned to face her. "About what?" "About why you're really doing this. And don't tell me it's business, because we both know that's not the whole truth." Ryan's expression cracked, just a little. "You want the truth?" "Yes." "Fine." He crossed the room and sat back down, close enough that Emma could see the gold flecks in his brown eyes. "I'm doing this because I spent 12 years trying to forget you, and I couldn't. Because I built a company worth billions, and it still felt empty. Because when I saw you behind that truck window, it was the first time in over a decade that I felt like I could breathe again." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. "I'm doing this because I was stupid enough to think success would make me happy, and it didn't, because I let you go, and it was the biggest mistake of my life." His voice dropped. "And because I know I don't deserve a second chance, but I'm selfish enough to want one anyway." The office felt too quiet, too small. Emma's hands were shaking. "Ryan, you asked for honesty, that's it. That's the truth." He sat back, running a hand through his hair. "But you're right, the business angle isn't stable. The permits are a nightmare, and there's no guarantee we'll get approval. So here's what I'm proposing instead." He pulled out his phone and opened a document. "Forget the campus. I'll fund your restaurant independently. Find a location in Brooklyn or Manhattan, wherever you want. I'll cover the lease, the equipment, the build-out. You pay me back when you're profitable." Emma stared at him. "That's insane." "Probably. I could take your money and fail completely. You'd lose everything you invested." "I know." "Then why would you do it?" Ryan met her eyes. "Because I believe in you. I believed in you 12 years ago, and I believe in you now." Emma felt something shift in her chest, like a locked door swinging open. She wanted to say yes, wanted it so badly it scared her, but she'd learned the hard way that wanting something didn't make it safe. "I need time to think," she said quietly. "Take all the time you need." Emma stood, and Ryan walked her to the door. His hand brushed her elbow as he opened it, and the touch sent electricity up her arm. "Emma?" He said her name like a question. She looked back at him. "For what it's worth," Ryan said softly, "I know I can't fix the past, but I'd like the chance to be part of your future, however that looks." Emma didn't trust herself to answer. She just nodded and walked away. The next morning, Emma opened the truck at 6 a.m. like always. The temperature had climbed to a balmy 22 degrees, and the heating element was still broken, but she'd jury-rigged a space heater that at least kept her fingers functional. She had 3 customers by 7. At 8:30, a man in a designer coat ordered a coffee and left a $50 tip. At 9, a woman asked if she was the Emma Brooks from the Bennett Technologies deal. By 10, there was a line stretching around the block. Emma stared at it in confusion until Jenny showed up for her shift and pulled up a news article on her phone. Tech billionaire Ryan Bennett invests in local food entrepreneur. The piece featured a photo of Emma's truck and a glowing quote from Ryan about supporting small businesses and investing in authentic talent. It had been published that morning in the Times business section. "Holy shit," Jenny breathed. "Emma, do you know what this means?" Emma's hands were shaking. "He didn't ask me." "What?" "He didn't ask if he could do this. He just—" She couldn't finish the sentence, because part of her was furious that Ryan had made this decision without consulting her, had thrown her into the spotlight without permission. And part of her knew exactly why he'd done it. The line stayed busy all morning. Emma worked in a daze, taking orders and making sandwiches while her brain screamed at her to think, to process, to figure out what the hell she was supposed to do now. At 2 p.m., when the rush finally slowed, she called Ryan. He answered on the first ring. "Emma." "What did you do?" "I gave an interview to the Times. They've been trying to get me to talk about the Brooklyn campus project for weeks. I figured I'd give them something." "You used me for publicity." "No, I told the truth, that you're talented and deserve recognition." His voice was calm, steady. "I know you're angry." "Angry? Ryan, I've got a line of people around the block treating my truck like some kind of tourist attraction. Half of them don't even want food. They just want to take pictures for Instagram." "Is that a bad thing?" Emma opened her mouth to argue and realized she didn't have an answer. Because the truth was, she'd made more money today than she had all month. Her cash register was overflowing. People were actually buying her food. "I should have asked first," Ryan said quietly. "You're right. I'm sorry." Emma closed her eyes. "Stop apologizing. Then stop being mad at me for trying to help. I'm not mad because you're helping. I'm mad because you keep making decisions for me, like I'm some project you need to manage." There was a long pause. "You're right," Ryan said finally. "I'm doing it again. The same thing I did 12 years ago, assuming I know what's best for you." "Yeah, you are." "So tell me what you want. Not what I want, not what makes sense on paper. What do you want, Emma?" It was the same question Lily had asked her, the same question Emma had been avoiding for weeks. What did she want? She wanted to stop being afraid. She wanted to build something that mattered. She wanted to prove that all the years of struggle and sacrifice had been worth it. And she wanted Ryan. Still, despite everything. "I want to do this my way," Emma said. "If I take your money, it's a business loan with interest and a repayment schedule. Not charity, not a favor. Business. Done. And I want creative control. You don't get to tell me where to open or what to serve or how to run things." "Agreed. And we keep this professional. No, whatever this is between us, not until I figure out if I can trust you again." The silence stretched so long Emma thought he might have hung up. Then Ryan said, "Okay. Okay?" You're right, I need to earn your trust, so that's what I'll do. His voice was rough. But Emma? What? When you do figure it out, when you decide whether you can trust me, I'm going to be here, however long it takes. Emma's throat tightened. Don't make promises you can't keep. I'm not. She ended the call before she could say something she'd regret. The loan paperwork arrived 2 days later. David Chen reviewed it in his office while Emma paced behind him wearing a hole in his carpet. This is legitimate, David said for the third time. 1.5 million at 3% interest. Repayment starting 12 months after the restaurant opens. Emma, these are incredibly favorable terms. Too favorable. Maybe he just wants to help you succeed. Or maybe he wants to own me. David set down the papers and looked at her. Is that what you really think? That Ryan Bennett is trying to trap you? Emma sank into the chair across from him. I don't know what to think anymore. Then let me ask you something. If this loan came from a bank, if Ryan wasn't involved at all, would you take it? In a heartbeat? Then maybe that's your answer. Emma stared at the signature line, her whole future condensed into one pen stroke. She signed her name before she could talk herself out of it. Within a week, Emma had closed on a lease for a narrow storefront in Brooklyn Heights. It had been a pizzeria before, the kind of neighborhood spot where the ovens had been running since the 70s and the floor tiles were permanently stained with decades of grease. It was perfect. Emma stood in the empty space surrounded by peeling wallpaper and water damage, and for the first time in years she felt something close to hope. Ryan showed up on the second day of renovations. Emma was on a ladder scraping old paint when she heard the door chime. She looked down to find him standing in the doorway holding 2 coffees and wearing jeans that looked like they'd been professionally distressed. You're getting paint in your hair, he said. I'm aware. Emma climbed down, accepting the coffee he offered. What are you doing here? I wanted to see the space. It's a mess. It's got good bones. Ryan walked the perimeter, examining the exposed brick and the high ceilings. You're keeping the original ovens? If they still work, the inspector's coming tomorrow. And the layout? Emma pulled out her phone and showed him the floor plan she'd sketched. Open kitchen, counter seating, maybe 20 tables if they packed them tight. Ryan studied it for a long moment. You're wasting space here. He pointed to the back corner. If you shift the kitchen 3 feet that way, you can fit another prep station and still have room for a walk-in cooler. I can't afford a walk-in cooler. It's not optional if you want to scale. Trust me on this. Emma bristled. I thought we agreed you weren't going to tell me how to run things. I'm not telling you. I'm suggesting. There's a difference. Is there? Ryan set down his coffee. Look, I've built 3 separate company headquarters from the ground up. I know construction, I know workflow optimization, and I know what kills small businesses. If you want my input, I'm happy to give it. If you don't, I'll leave right now. Emma wanted to tell him to go, wanted to prove she could do this without him. But the truth was she had no idea what she was doing. She'd never built a restaurant before. She'd never managed contractors or designed a commercial kitchen or dealt with health inspectors. Pride would only get her so far. Fine, she said. Show me what you're thinking. They spent the next 3 hours going over the plans. Ryan pointed out inefficiencies Emma hadn't noticed, suggested equipment upgrades she hadn't considered, and made a list of contractors who wouldn't rip her off. By the time he left, Emma's notebook was full of notes and her head was spinning. Thank you, she said at the door. Ryan paused. For what? For not making me feel stupid. Something soft crossed his face. Emma, you're one of the smartest people I know. Don't ever think otherwise. He left before she could respond. The renovations took 4 months. 4 months of 12-hour days, contractor delays, and problems Emma hadn't anticipated. The electrical needed upgrading. The plumbing was a disaster. The health inspector found code violations that required tearing out half the kitchen and starting over. Emma worked herself into exhaustion, fueled by coffee and stubborn refusal to fail. Ryan showed up twice a week like clockwork. He never stayed long, just checked on progress, reviewed invoices, made sure the contractors weren't screwing her over. He was professional, helpful, and kept exactly the distance Emma had asked for. It was driving her crazy, because every time he walked through that door, Emma felt the walls she'd built crack a little more. Every time he smiled at something she'd done, a menu she'd written, a design choice she'd made, She remembered why she'd fallen in love with him in the first place, and that terrified her more than anything else. It was Lily who finally called her out on it. "You're an idiot," her sister announced one evening, rolling into the restaurant space where Emma was painting the trim. "Hello to you too. You're in love with him, still, after everything." Emma's hand slipped, leaving a streak of green across the white wall. "I am not." "Please. I've seen the way you look at him when you think nobody's watching. You're gone, Em. Completely gone. He broke my heart. 12 years ago. People change." "Not that much." Lily wheeled closer. "Has he given you any reason not to trust him? In the past 4 months, has he done anything that made you think he's the same guy who left?" Emma wanted to say yes, wanted to point to something concrete that proved Ryan hadn't changed, that this was all just an act. But she couldn't. "That's what I thought." Lily grabbed the paintbrush from her hand. "So stop being scared and just talk to him. Actually talk to him. About the real stuff, not just restaurant plans and contractor schedules." "I don't know how." "Then figure it out, because he's not going to wait forever." Emma thought about that conversation all night. And the next morning, when Ryan showed up for his usual check-in, she made a decision. "Have dinner with me," she said. Ryan froze halfway through examining the new prep station. "What?" "Dinner, tonight. Nothing fancy, just we should talk. About things that aren't the restaurant." For a moment she thought he'd say no. Then he smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes and made her chest ache. "I'd like that," Ryan said softly. "I'd really like that." They met at a tiny Italian place in the West Village that looked like it had been operating since before either of them was born. Red checkered tablecloths, candles stuck in wine bottles, and a menu written in fading chalk on a blackboard behind the bar. Emma arrived first, her stomach churning with nerves she refused to acknowledge. She'd changed her outfit 3 times before leaving her apartment, finally settling on jeans and a sweater that didn't have paint stains on it. This wasn't a date. It was just dinner. A conversation. She was still repeating that to herself when Ryan walked through the door. He'd lost the suit. Instead, he wore dark jeans and a gray Henley that made him look younger, less like a CEO and more like the boy she'd known in Ohio. The boy who used to steal fries off her plate and make terrible jokes just to hear her laugh. "Sorry I'm late," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "My daughter called right as I was leaving." Emma's hand froze halfway to her water glass. "Your daughter." Ryan's expression shifted like he'd just realized what he'd said. "Yeah, Sophie. She's 7. Of course he had a daughter. Emma had known that somewhere in the abstract, had seen it mentioned in the Times article. But hearing him say it out loud, seeing the way his whole face softened when he talked about her, that was different. "I didn't know you were married," Emma said carefully. "I'm not. Haven't been for about 5 years now." Ryan picked up his menu, not quite meeting her eyes. It was brief. "Michelle and I, we tried to make it work, but we wanted different things. She's remarried now, living in Seattle. Sophie stays with me most of the time." Emma absorbed this information slowly. Ryan had gotten married, had a child, had built an entire life that she knew nothing about. "What's she like?" Emma asked. "Sophie." Ryan's face lit up in a way she'd never seen before. "She's terrifying, smart as hell, zero filter, and she's got me completely wrapped around her finger." He pulled out his phone and showed Emma a photo of a little girl with dark curls and her father's eyes, grinning at the camera with 2 missing front teeth. "She's beautiful," Emma said, and meant it. "She's a nightmare. Last week she convinced her teacher I was an astronaut because I have a space company. I had to explain to the entire 2nd grade that venture capital investment in aerospace startups doesn't actually make me an astronaut." Emma laughed before she could stop herself. "That's kind of amazing." "That's Sophie." Ryan put his phone away. "She wants to meet you, by the way." Emma's stomach flipped. "What?" "I told her about the restaurant. She's been asking nonstop when she can try your sandwiches." "You told your 7-year-old about me?" "I told her I was helping a friend open a restaurant. She filled in the rest on her own." Ryan leaned back in his chair. "She's got this theory that I'm secretly a superhero who fights crime at night. Meeting you would probably shatter that illusion, so fair warning." The waiter appeared before Emma could respond, and they ordered without really looking at the menu. After he left, silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable exactly, but heavy with things neither of them knew how to say. Can I ask you something? Emma said finally. Anything. Why did you really come back? To New York, I mean. Your company's based in San Francisco. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. We're opening the East Coast office. I told you that. That's the official reason. What's the real one? He met her eyes. I was tired of running. From what? From the fact that I built everything I thought I wanted and still felt empty. From knowing that I'd thrown away the best thing that ever happened to me. His voice dropped. From you. Emma's throat tightened. You can't just say things like that. Why not? It's true. Because it's not fair. You don't get to show up after 12 years and what? Be honest? Ryan leaned forward. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I screwed up so badly that there's probably no fixing it, but I'm tired of pretending I don't still love you. The words hit Emma like a physical blow. She opened her mouth, closed it again. The restaurant suddenly felt too loud, too bright. You don't mean that, she managed. Yes, I do. Ryan, I've loved you since we were 20 years old, Emma. That didn't stop when I got on a plane to California. It didn't stop when I married Michelle or when we got divorced or when I built a company worth billions. It's been 12 years and I still love you. Emma stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. I need some air. She was halfway to the door when Ryan caught up with her, his hand gentle on her elbow. Emma, wait. Don't! She pulled away but didn't run, just stood there on the sidewalk with her arms wrapped around herself, trying to breathe. You don't get to do this. Do what? Make me feel this way again. I spent years getting over you, Ryan. Years convincing myself that we were young and stupid and it wasn't real. And now you're here telling me you still loved me like that somehow makes everything okay. I'm not saying it makes anything okay. I'm saying it's the truth. Emma spun to face him. What do you want from me? What am I supposed to do with that information? Nothing. I don't want anything. Ryan shoved his hands in his pockets. I just needed you to know. I've spent 12 years keeping secrets, and I'm done. You asked for honesty, so that's what I'm giving you. Well, I didn't ask for a confession. I know. But you got one anyway. They stood there in the cold, breath fogging between them. Emma could hear traffic rushing past, voices from inside the restaurant, her own heart pounding in her ears. I don't know if I can do this, she said quietly. Then don't. Walk away right now, and I won't follow. I'll finish helping with the restaurant because I made a commitment, but after that, I'm gone. You'll never have to see me again. Emma looked at him, really looked at him, at the boy she'd loved and the man he'd become, at the pain in his eyes that matched her own. Is that what you want? She asked. No, but it's not about what I want anymore. Emma closed her eyes. She could walk away, could protect herself the way she'd been doing for years, could go back to her safe small life where nobody got close enough to hurt her. Or she could take the risk. I hated you, she said, opening her eyes. After you left, I hated you so much I couldn't breathe sometimes. Ryan flinched but didn't look away. And then I got over it, moved on, built a life, and I told myself I was fine. Emma's voice cracked. But seeing you again, it's like everything I buried just came rushing back. The good parts and the bad parts and all the messy, complicated parts I didn't know what to do with. Emma, I'm not done. She stepped closer. You broke my heart, Ryan. Completely shattered it, and I don't know if I can trust you not to do it again. I know, but I also can't pretend I don't feel something, because I do. I hate that I do, but I can't turn it off. Ryan's expression shifted, hope mixing with caution. What are you saying? I'm saying I need time, real time, not just a few weeks of you being helpful and charming. I need to figure out if this is real or if it's just nostalgia and proximity. Okay. And I need you to stop looking at me like that. Like what? Like I'm the answer to every question you've ever had. Because I'm not. I'm just a person, Ryan. A very confused person who's trying not to make the same mistake twice. Ryan nodded slowly. So where does that leave us? I don't know. Friends, maybe? Can we try that? The word clearly hurt him, but he covered it quickly. Yeah, we can try that. They went back inside and finished dinner. The conversation stayed lighter after that. Safe topics like the restaurant timeline and Sophie's latest school project and the contractor who kept showing up 3 hours late. It felt almost normal sitting across from Ryan and talking about nothing important, almost like they were two people who hadn't destroyed each other once upon a time. When the check came, they argued over who would pay until the waiter got visibly uncomfortable, and they agreed to split it. Outside, Ryan flagged down a cab for Emma, even though she insisted she could take the subway. "Text me when you get home," he said, holding the door open. "You're not my boyfriend." "I know. Text me anyway." Emma climbed into the cab and Ryan shut the door behind her. Through the window, she watched him stand there on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, until the taxi turned the corner and he disappeared from view. She texted him 15 minutes later. "Home safe. Thanks for dinner." His response came immediately. "Anytime. Sleep well." Emma stared at her phone for a long time before finally turning it off and trying to do exactly that. The restaurant build-out hit a wall 3 weeks later when the main contractor quit without warning, leaving half the kitchen incomplete and Emma's timeline in shambles. She was standing in the middle of the chaos, surrounded by exposed wiring and half-installed cabinets, when her phone rang. "Emma Brooks?" An unfamiliar voice. "This is Richard Chen from Brooklyn Building Authority. We need to talk about your permits." Emma's stomach dropped. "Is there a problem?" "Several, actually. Your electrical work hasn't been inspected yet, and we've got some concerns about the ventilation system. You're going to need to shut down construction until we can get someone out there." "How long will that take?" "Could be 2 weeks, could be 2 months. We're pretty backed up." Emma closed her eyes. 2 months would destroy her timeline completely. She'd lose the deposit on the equipment, probably have to renegotiate the lease, and burn through her loan money on rent for a space she couldn't even work in. "There has to be another way," she said. "I don't make the rules, Ms. Brooks. I just enforce them." Emma thanked him and hung up, then sat down on the dusty floor and put her head in her hands. This was it. The moment where everything fell apart. She'd been stupid to think she could actually pull this off. Stupid to believe she deserved something better than her beat-up food truck and her hand-to-mouth existence. Her phone buzzed, a text from Ryan. "How's it going?" Emma stared at the message. She could tell him the truth, let him swoop in and fix everything with a phone call or a check or whatever magic billionaires use to make problems disappear. Or she could handle it herself. She called Marcus Chen instead. No relation to Richard, thankfully, the contractor Ryan had recommended 3 months ago. He'd been too expensive then, but Emma was past the point of caring about her budget. "I need help," she said when he answered, "and I need it fast." Marcus showed up 30 minutes later with a crew of 4 and took one look at the mess the previous contractor had left. "Jesus," he muttered. "Who did this work?" "Don't ask. I'm going to need 2 weeks minimum to fix this properly. Maybe 3. "I don't have 3 weeks. I need to open in 6. Marcus looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "That's not possible. Make it possible, please. I'll pay whatever you need." He pulled out a calculator and started running numbers. When he showed her the total, Emma's heart sank. It was more than she had left in the loan, more than she could afford, but it was also her only option. "Do it," she said. Marcus and his crew started that afternoon. Emma worked alongside them, doing whatever they'd let her do. Hauling equipment, painting walls, cleaning up debris. She worked 16-hour days fueled by coffee and stubborn determination. Ryan showed up on the 3rd day and immediately tried to help carry an industrial mixer. "What are you doing?" Emma asked, grabbing the other end before he could lift it alone. "Helping." "In a suit?" "I've got another one." They carried the mixer to the kitchen together, setting it down by the prep station. Ryan's shirt was untucked, and there was dust on his shoulder, and Emma had to actively stop herself from brushing it off. "You don't have to be here," she said. "I'm sure you've got CEO things to do." I rescheduled. "Ryan, I'm not trying to take over. I just want to help, as a friend." He said the word carefully, like he was testing its weight. Emma studied his face, looking for signs of pity or condescension. She found neither. "Fine," she said. "But if you're staying, you're working. Grab a paintbrush." They painted for 3 hours, working in comfortable silence broken only by Marcus shouting instructions to his crew. At one point, Ryan got paint on his nose, and Emma laughed so hard she had to sit down. "What?" Ryan touched his face, spreading the paint further. "Nothing. You look ridiculous," says the woman who has paint in her hair. Emma touched her ponytail and came away with green fingers. "Oh, Well, at least I'm not wearing a $1,000 suit. It's actually 1,500. That's worse. Why would you wear a $1,500 suit to a construction site? Because I came straight from a board meeting? Ryan grinned. And because I knew it would annoy you. Emma threw her paintbrush at him. He dodged, still laughing, and the sound did something strange to her chest. This was dangerous. This easy comfort. This feeling like they'd never been apart. It would be so easy to fall back into old patterns, to let herself believe that time had healed everything. But Emma had learned the hard way that some wounds just scarred over without ever really healing. I should get back to work, she said, standing up. Ryan's smile faded. Yeah, me too. He left 20 minutes later and Emma tried very hard not to watch him go. The weeks blurred together after that. Marcus and his crew worked miracles, and slowly the restaurant started to take shape. Emma interviewed kitchen staff, finalized the menu, and spent every spare moment testing recipes until her tiny apartment smelled permanently of garlic and rosemary. Ryan kept showing up, always finding some excuse to be useful. He never stayed long, never pushed for more than Emma was willing to give, just showed up, helped where he could, and left before she could tell him to go. It was Lily who pointed out what Emma was too stubborn to admit. You're falling for him again, her sister said one evening, watching Emma obsessively check her phone for the third time in 10 minutes. I am not. Please. You've been smiling at your phone for the past hour. Either Ryan texted you or you've developed a very weird relationship with your utility company. Emma set down her phone. It's not like that. Then what's it like? We're friends. That's what we agreed on. Lily snorted. Right, and I'm training for a marathon. That's not funny. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm trying to get you to admit that you're in love with him, still. Again. Whatever. Emma opened her mouth to argue and realized she couldn't. Because Lily was right. Somewhere between the renovation chaos and the late-night menu planning and the way Ryan looked at her like she'd hung the moon, Emma had let her walls come down. And now she was completely exposed. I'm scared, Emma admitted quietly. I know, but maybe that's okay. Maybe being scared means you actually care about something. What if he leaves again? What if he doesn't? Emma didn't have an answer for that. Opening night was scheduled for the first Friday in May. Emma spent the week before in a state of controlled panic. The health inspector came and went, miraculously approving everything. The equipment all worked. The staff was trained. The menu was finalized. Everything was perfect, which meant something was bound to go wrong. The something turned out to be her executive chef calling 3 days before opening to say he'd accepted another position. Emma took the news standing in her empty restaurant at 11 p.m., phone pressed to her ear, trying not to scream. You're kidding, she said. I'm sorry, Emma. They offered me twice what you're paying, and I've got student loans. When were you planning to tell me, before or after we opened? I just found out today. I know the timing is terrible. The timing is catastrophic. Emma pressed her fingers to her temples. I have 150 reservations and no one to run the kitchen. I can stay through the weekend. Don't bother. She hung up and immediately called Lily. I'm screwed, Emma said when her sister answered. Completely screwed. What happened? Emma explained. Lily listened without interrupting, which meant she understood exactly how bad this was. Call Ryan, Lily said when Emma finished. No. Emma. I said no. I'm not running to him every time something goes wrong. I need to figure this out myself. You don't have time to figure it out yourself. You open in 3 days. I know that. Then swallow your pride and ask for help. Emma ended the call and sat in the dark, surrounded by empty tables and the ghost of everything she'd worked for. She could call Ryan. He'd know people, could probably have a replacement chef here by tomorrow morning. But that would mean admitting she couldn't handle this on her own, that she needed him. And Emma had spent 12 years proving she didn't need anyone. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. How's the prep going? Emma stared at the screen for a long time. Then she typed, Not great. Can you talk? He called immediately. What's wrong? Emma told him everything, the chef quitting, the timeline, the 150 people expecting a restaurant that now had no one to cook for them. Ryan was quiet for a moment after she finished. Then he said, Come work in my kitchen. What? My apartment. I've got a full professional setup, 12-burner stove, double oven, everything you'd need to prep for opening weekend. You and your sous chef can use it to get everything ready. Ryan, I can't. Yes, you can. I'm not offering to fix it for you. I'm offering you space to fix it yourself. His voice was steady. The kitchen's just sitting there. You might as well use it. Emma wanted to say no, wanted to maintain her independence, her boundaries, all the careful distance she'd been trying to keep. But she was out of options. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. I'll text you the address. Ryan's apartment was in a glass tower overlooking Central Park. Emma stood in the lobby the next morning feeling completely out of place in her kitchen whites and work boots. The doorman directed her to the private elevator. She rode up to the 48th floor, her stomach churning with nerves that had nothing to do with the restaurant. Ryan answered the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair still wet from the shower. Behind him, Emma could see floor-to-ceiling windows and enough square footage to fit her entire building. Coffee? He offered. Please. He led her through the living room, minimalist furniture, abstract art, the kind of space that looked like it belonged in a magazine, into the kitchen. Emma stopped in the doorway. The kitchen was bigger than her entire restaurant. Professional-grade everything, marble countertops, enough storage to stock a small country. It was beautiful and intimidating and exactly what she needed. This is insane, she breathed. It's mostly for show. I don't cook much. Ryan handed her a coffee mug. Sophie and I live on takeout and cereal. This is all Michelle's doing. She insisted when we were married. Well, tell her thank you from me. I'll include it in the next child support check. Emma laughed despite herself. That's dark. That's divorce. Ryan gestured around the space. It's all yours for the next 3 days. I'll be out of your way. You don't have to leave. It's your apartment. I know, but I figure you'll work better without me hovering. He grabbed his laptop and a jacket, pausing at the door. Emma? Yeah? You're going to be great. You know that, right? Her throat tightened. I hope so. I know so. And then he was gone, leaving Emma alone in his absurdly perfect kitchen with 3 days to save her restaurant. She got to work. Emma and her sous chef, Carlos, worked for 18 hours straight that first day, transforming Ryan's pristine kitchen into organized chaos. Stock simmered on every burner, dough-proofed in carefully labeled containers. The smell of roasting garlic and fresh herbs filled the apartment until it stopped feeling like a showpiece and started feeling like a real kitchen. Carlos left around midnight, exhausted but optimistic. Emma stayed. She was elbow-deep in prep work, testing a sauce she couldn't quite get right, when she heard the front door open. Ryan appeared in the kitchen doorway, still wearing his suit, tie loosened and looking as tired as she felt. You're still here, he said. I'm sorry. I lost track of time. I can clean up and… Emma, relax. I don't care. He shrugged off his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. You eat dinner? She tried to remember. I had a protein bar around 3. That's not dinner. Ryan opened the fridge, which was now completely full of her prep containers, and started moving things around. What can I touch without ruining tomorrow? Nothing in the white containers. Everything else is fair game. He pulled out eggs, cheese, some vegetables she'd chopped earlier. Omelet okay? You don't have to cook for me. I know, but I'm hungry, and cooking for one person is depressing. He found a pan, turned on the burner. Besides, this is my chance to use this kitchen for something other than reheating Chinese food. Emma watched him work, surprised by how comfortable he looked. His movements were efficient, if not practiced, and within 10 minutes he'd produced 2 respectable omelets. They ate standing up at the counter because every surface was covered with her prep work. This is good, Emma said, genuinely surprised. Don't sound so shocked. I can cook basic things. I just figured you had people for that. I do. But Sophie likes when I make breakfast on weekends. Says it tastes better than when the chef does it. Ryan took another bite. Pretty sure she's lying, but I appreciate the effort. Emma smiled. She sounds like a good kid. She's the only thing I didn't screw up. He said it lightly, but there was weight behind the words. Everything else, the marriage, the company politics, the way I've handled my life, it's been a mess. But Sophie, she's perfect. Nothing's perfect. She is, even when she's being a nightmare. Ryan set down his fork. She asked about you again yesterday. Wanted to know if you were coming to her dance recital next month. Emma nearly choked on her omelet. What did you tell her? That I'd ask you. He met her eyes. So I'm asking. No pressure. I know we're still figuring out the friend thing. The friend thing. Right. Except nothing about this felt like friendship. Not the way her heart kicked up when he walked into a room. Not the way she'd started looking forward to his random texts. Not the way she was currently standing in his kitchen at 1 a.m. feeling more at home than she had in years. I'll check my schedule, Emma said carefully. That's a no. That's a maybe. Ryan studied her face for a long moment. Fair enough. They finished eating in silence. Ryan insisted on doing the dishes while Emma went back to her sauce, and for a while they worked side by side without talking. It should have been awkward. Instead, it felt natural, like they'd done this 1,000 times before. I should go, Emma said finally, when her eyes started burning with exhaustion. Let you get some sleep. You could stay. Guest room's empty. Ryan, I'm not trying anything. I just mean it's late and you're exhausted and you'll be back here in 6 hours anyway. He dried his hands on a towel. But if you'd rather go home, I understand. Emma knew she should leave, should maintain boundaries, keep distance, protect herself. But she was so tired of protecting herself. Okay, she heard herself say. Just for tonight. Ryan showed her to a bedroom that was bigger than her entire apartment. The bed looked like something from a hotel. Crisp white sheets, too many pillows, probably cost more than her monthly rent. Bathroom's through there. There should be spare toiletries in the cabinet. He hesitated at the door. Emma? Yeah? Thanks for letting me help. I know it's not easy for you. She wanted to deny it, but they'd promised each other honesty. No, it's not. I appreciate it anyway. After he left, Emma stood in the unfamiliar room feeling completely out of place. This wasn't her world, the expensive apartment, the designer furniture, the casual wealth that Ryan wore like a second skin. But when she finally crawled into bed, exhausted and nervous about opening night, she fell asleep almost immediately. She woke up 6 hours later to the smell of coffee and the sound of a child's laughter. Emma pulled on yesterday's clothes and followed the noise to the kitchen, where she found Ryan making pancakes while a little girl in princess pajamas sat on the counter narrating his every move. You're doing it wrong, Daddy. The bubbles have to pop first. I know, Soph. I've made pancakes before. Not very well. Ryan looked up and saw Emma standing in the doorway. His expression went carefully neutral. Morning, coffee's fresh. The little girl, Sophie, spun around and stared at Emma with huge brown eyes. Are you the sandwich lady? Emma couldn't help but smile. I guess I am. Daddy says you make the best food in the whole world, better than Mario's. Mario's our chef, Ryan explained. Sophie's convinced he's a wizard. He might be. I've never seen him use a recipe book. Sophie hopped down from the counter and walked right up to Emma, studying her with the kind of intensity only children could manage. Do you know my dad from before? Emma glanced at Ryan, who looked like he wanted to intervene but didn't. We knew each other a long time ago, Emma said, when we were younger. Were you friends? Something like that. Sophie seemed to accept this. Do you want pancakes? Daddy makes them too thick, but they're okay if you put enough syrup on them. Hey, Ryan protested. My pancakes are perfect. They're really not. Emma laughed, and some of the tension in her chest loosened. I'd love some pancakes. They ate breakfast together, Emma, Ryan, and Sophie, and it felt surreal, like playing house in someone else's life. Sophie chattered nonstop about her dance recital, her best friend Madison, who was mean sometimes, and a boy in her class who ate glue. That's gross, Sophie, Ryan said. I know, that's why I'm telling you. She turned to Emma. Do you have kids? No, just a sister. Is she nice? Emma thought about Lily's sharp tongue and sharper observations. Most of the time. Madison's only nice when she wants something. Last week she was nice because she wanted to copy my homework. I said no because that's cheating. Good call, Emma said. Ryan checked his watch. Soph, you need to get dressed. The car's coming in 20 minutes. Can Emma come to my recital? Sophie, please, Madison's whole family is coming, even her mean grandma who smells like mothballs. Ryan looked at Emma helplessly. You don't have to. I'd like to, Emma said, surprising herself. If that's okay. Sophie's face lit up. Yes, Daddy, did you hear? Emma's coming. I heard. Ryan's expression was unreadable. Now go get dressed before we're late. Sophie ran off, leaving Emma and Ryan alone in the kitchen. You really don't have to come, Ryan said quietly. She'll forget about it in an hour. I know, but I want to. Emma picked up her coffee mug. She's great, by the way. You did good. I got lucky. He started clearing the breakfast dishes. Fair warning, the recital is going to be 3 hours of 7-year-olds doing interpretive dance to Disney songs. It's excruciating. Sounds perfect. Ryan smiled and Emma felt something shift in her chest. This was dangerous. Getting pulled into his life, meeting his daughter, having breakfast like they were a family. But she'd stopped being careful somewhere along the way. Carlos arrived at 9 with 2 additional prep cooks Emma had hired for opening weekend. They took over Ryan's kitchen like an invading army, and within an hour the apartment smelled like a professional kitchen. Emma worked in a focused trance, checking off items on her prep list, tasting everything twice, making sure every component was perfect. This was it. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd sacrificed, all condensed into 3 days of service. She couldn't afford to fail. Ryan appeared around noon with sandwiches from a deli down the street. Emma tried to wave him off, but he just set the food on the only clear counter space and disappeared again. Your boyfriend's nice, Carlos said, unwrapping a sandwich. He's not my boyfriend. Right. He just lets you take over his apartment and brings you lunch. Very platonic. Carlos, I'm just saying, the man looks at you like you're the only person in the room. That's not friendship, chef. Emma didn't have an answer for that. They worked until midnight, when Ryan finally kicked everyone out because Sophie was asleep and he had an early meeting. Emma was the last to leave, doing a final check of all the containers, making sure everything was labeled and dated. You're going to be amazing tomorrow, Ryan said, walking her to the elevator. You don't know that. Yes, I do. I've watched you work for 4 months. I've tasted your food. You're the best chef I've ever met, Emma. You just don't believe it yet. She wanted to argue, but exhaustion had stripped away her defenses. What if nobody comes? Then we'll eat really well for the next month. He pressed the elevator button. But they'll come. Trust me. I'm not good at trust. I know, but I'm asking anyway. The elevator dinged and Emma stepped inside. She turned to face Ryan, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. Thank you, she said. For everything. The kitchen, the help, everything. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. The doors started to close. Ryan caught them, holding them open. Emma? Yeah? Tomorrow, after service? I want to take you somewhere to celebrate. Ryan, as friends, I promise, just 2 friends celebrating an achievement. Emma knew she should say no, should maintain the boundaries they'd agreed on, but she was tired of saying no to things she wanted. Okay, she said, but only if the night doesn't completely fall apart. It won't. He let the doors close, and Emma watched him disappear as the elevator descended. Opening night arrived with perfect weather and Emma's worst anxiety. She got to the restaurant at noon, even though service didn't start until 6. The staff arrived at 2 for final prep and a family meal. Emma gave a speech she'd practiced in her head, but forgot halfway through, finally just saying, "Don't screw up, and we'll be fine." Not exactly inspirational, but it got a laugh. The first reservations were at 6:15. Emma watched from the kitchen as people started filing in, couples, families, groups of friends dressed like they were going somewhere that mattered. Her restaurant, her menu, her dream finally real. Order in, her expediter called. 2 butternut squash, 1 short rib, 1 salmon. And then there was no time to be nervous because the tickets started printing and the orders kept coming, and Emma fell into the rhythm of the kitchen like she'd been doing it her whole life. She worked the line with Carlos, calling out orders, checking plates, keeping the flow steady. The kitchen was loud and hot and chaotic, but it was the kind of chaos Emma understood. This she could control. Except at 7:30, the dishwasher broke. Emma stared at the pool of water spreading across the floor and felt her carefully maintained calm start to crack. Are you kidding me right now? I called the repair guy, Carlos said. He can't get here until tomorrow. We have 100 more covers tonight. We can't do service without a dishwasher. We can hand wash. Not fast enough. Emma looked at the growing pile of dirty dishes. We're screwed. She was about to make the call to tell the front of house to stop seating people when Ryan appeared in the kitchen doorway. He was dressed in a suit like he'd come from work, but he immediately rolled up his sleeves. "I heard you need a dishwasher." "What are you doing here?" "Sophie's with her mom this weekend. I had time." He gestured at the broken machine. "So do you want to stand here arguing, or do you want me to help?" Emma looked at him, then at the pile of dishes, then back at him. "There's an apron in the office," she said. Ryan spent the next 4 hours washing dishes by hand. He worked without complaining, without making a big deal of it, just keeping the plates clean and the kitchen running. Emma caught him once between services, his sleeves soaked and his hair falling in his eyes, and felt something in her chest crack wide open. This was the boy she'd fallen in love with. Not the billionaire CEO, not the polished businessman. Just Ryan, willing to wash dishes in her kitchen because she needed him to. Service ended at 11. The last table left at 11:30. Emma's staff cleaned up, high on adrenaline and exhaustion, celebrating a night that had gone better than any of them expected. The reviews would come later, the critics, the Instagram posts, the word of mouth. But right now, in this moment, Emma just felt grateful. Ryan found her in the kitchen after everyone else had left. He'd changed back into his suit jacket, though his shirt was still damp. "You ready?" he asked. Emma had forgotten about his celebration plan. "Ryan, I'm exhausted. I know, but trust me on this one." She almost said no. Almost told him she needed to go home, process everything, maintain some kind of boundary. But she'd already let him into her kitchen, into her life, into the parts of herself she'd been protecting for 12 years. What was one more risk? "Okay," she said, "but I smell like a kitchen." "You smell perfect." He drove them to Brooklyn Bridge Park and parked overlooking the water. The city lights reflected off the East River, and Emma could see Manhattan stretching out across the darkness. Ryan pulled a bottle of champagne from the back seat, along with 2 plastic cups. "Are we having a high school party?" Emma asked. "The best high school party." He popped the cork, poured them both generous amounts. "To Emma Brooks, who just opened the best restaurant in Brooklyn." "You haven't even eaten the food yet." "I don't need to. I've been tasting it for 4 months. He clinked his plastic cup against hers. "You did it, Emma. Everything you dreamed about. You did it." She took a sip of champagne, letting the bubbles settle on her tongue. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have. You're the most capable person I know." "That's not true." "It is. You've been surviving on your own for 12 years, building a business from nothing, taking care of your sister. You didn't need me, Emma. You just let me help." She looked at him sitting there in his expensive suit in his expensive car, drinking champagne out of a plastic cup like they were 20 years old again. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Really? Not the business reasons, not the guilt. What do you actually want from me?" Ryan set down his cup. "Do you remember that night in Ohio, the last night before I left?" "Of course." "You told me that I was making a mistake, that if I got on that plane, I'd regret it for the rest of my life." He turned to face her fully. "You were right. I've regretted it every single day. Not the company or the success or the money, but losing you. That's the one thing I can't forgive myself for." Emma's throat tightened. "Ryan, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't deserve that. I'm just asking for a chance to be part of your life again, however that looks. Friend, business partner, dishwasher, I don't care. I just want to be around you." "That's not fair. You can't just say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I've spent 12 years convincing myself I was over you. And now you're here washing dishes in my kitchen and saying things that make me want to—" She stopped, pressing her hands to her face. "Want to what?" Emma dropped her hands. "Want to be reckless. Want to forget all the reasons this is a bad idea and just—" She didn't finish the sentence because Ryan leaned forward and kissed her. It wasn't like their first kiss, clumsy and eager in the parking lot of that Ohio diner. This was different, careful and questioning, like he was asking permission with every second. Emma could have pulled away, should have pulled away. Instead, she kissed him back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ryan rested his forehead against hers. "I'm sorry," he said. "I shouldn't have—" "Shut up." "Emma." She kissed him again, harder this time. 12 years of longing and anger and want poured into the space between them. Ryan's hand came up to cup her face, and Emma felt something inside her finally break free. This was stupid. This was reckless. This was everything she'd been trying to avoid, but she was done avoiding. When they finally came up for air, Emma's hands were shaking. This doesn't mean I trust you. I know. And it doesn't mean we're together. I need time to figure this out. I'll give you all the time you need. And if I decide I can't do this, then I'll respect that. Ryan brushed a strand of hair from her face. But Emma? I'm not going anywhere this time. Whether you want me or not, I'm staying. Emma looked at him in the dim light of the car, at the man who'd broken her heart and spent 12 years becoming someone who might deserve a second chance. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too. What if we screw this up again? Then we screw it up. At least we tried. Emma laughed despite herself. That's a terrible pep talk. I'm better with business pitches. They sat there for a while longer, drinking champagne and watching the city lights. Ryan told her about a disastrous board meeting where someone suggested they pivot to cryptocurrency. Emma told him about the food critic who'd shown up on opening night and ordered the one dish she was least confident about. It felt easy, natural, like coming home. Around 1 a.m, Ryan drove her back to her apartment. He walked her to the door but didn't try to come up. Text me tomorrow? He said. Maybe. Emma. Fine. I'll text you. He smiled, and Emma felt that crack in her chest widen a little more. She was halfway up the stairs when she heard him call her name. She turned to find him standing at the bottom, hands in his pockets. For what it's worth, Ryan said, I think we're going to make it this time. You don't know that. No, but I believe it anyway. Emma went inside before she could do something really stupid, like run back down and kiss him again. Her phone buzzed before she even got her shoes off. I'm already counting the hours until I see you again. Ryan. Emma stared at the message, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. Then she typed back, Me too. The restaurant reviews started rolling in on Monday morning. Emma was in the kitchen prepping for lunch service when Carlos came running in with his phone, nearly knocking over a tray of mise en place. Chef, you need to see this. Emma didn't look up from the stock she was reducing. If it's another Instagram influencer asking for a free meal, the answer is no. It's the Times. They reviewed us. That got her attention. Emma wiped her hands and took the phone, her heart pounding as she read. The review was 3 paragraphs of the kind of praise Emma had only dreamed about. Words like exceptional and masterful and the kind of cooking that reminds you why you fell in love with food in the first place. 4 stars. Emma read it twice to make sure she wasn't hallucinating. Holy shit, she breathed. Right? Carlos was grinning like a maniac. We're booked solid for the next month. The phone hasn't stopped ringing. Emma handed back the phone, feeling dizzy. This was real. This was actually happening. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd sacrificed, it was paying off. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Saw the review. Told you so. Emma smiled despite herself and typed back, Don't gloat. It's unattractive. I'm allowed to gloat. I washed your dishes. Once. You washed dishes once. And I'll do it again if you need me to. Congratulations, Emma. You earned this. She stared at the message, feeling something warm settle in her chest. Then Lily called, screaming so loud Emma had to hold the phone away from her ear. You're famous. My sister is famous. I'm not famous. I just got a good review. A 4-star review in the New York Times. That's not just good. That's incredible. Lily's voice cracked with emotion. I'm so proud of you, Em. You did it. You actually did it. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. I had help. Yeah, but you're the one who cooked the food. You're the one who built this from nothing. Lily paused. And speaking of help, have you talked to Ryan? He texted. That's not what I meant. Emma knew exactly what she meant. They'd kissed 3 nights ago, and Emma had spent the past 72 hours trying to figure out what that meant, trying to decide if she was ready to risk her heart again. I don't know what I'm doing with him, Emma admitted. Then figure it out. Because from what I can see, that man is completely in love with you, and unless I'm reading this wrong, you feel the same way. Emma didn't deny it, couldn't deny it anymore. I'm scared, Lily. I know, but maybe that's okay. Maybe being scared means it matters. After they hung up, Emma stood in her kitchen, her actual kitchen, the one she owned, the one she'd built, and let herself feel it. All of it. The fear and the hope and the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, She deserved to be happy. Sophie's dance recital fell on a Saturday afternoon 3 weeks later, and Emma almost backed out 5 different times. She stood outside the school auditorium wearing the nicest dress she owned, which wasn't saying much, and seriously considered running. This was too much, too fast. Meeting Ryan's daughter, integrating into his life, pretending they were something they hadn't defined. Her phone buzzed. "Ryan, you here?" Emma took a deep breath and walked inside. The auditorium was packed with parents wielding cameras like weapons. Emma spotted Ryan immediately. He was impossible to miss, even in a crowd. He'd saved her a seat in the 3rd row, and when she slid in beside him, he smiled like she'd just made his entire day. "You came," he said. "I told Sophie I would." "I know, but I wasn't sure you'd actually show up." Emma bristled. "I keep my promises." "I know you do. That's one of the things I love about you." He said it casually, like those words didn't just detonate something in Emma's chest. Before she could respond, the lights dimmed and the recital began. Ryan hadn't been kidding about the interpretive dance. For 2 solid hours, Emma watched children in various costumes do their best to move in sync to music that ranged from classical to aggressively modern. It was chaotic and adorable, and occasionally painful to watch. But when Sophie came on stage in a blue tutu, her face serious with concentration, Emma felt something shift. The little girl moved with the kind of earnest intensity only children possessed, completely committed to every gesture, even when she was half a beat behind the music. Ryan leaned forward in his seat, phone out, recording every second. And Emma saw it then. The way his entire face transformed when he looked at his daughter. The way he whispered, "That's my girl," under his breath when Sophie nailed a particularly tricky turn. This was what she'd be signing up for. Not just Ryan, but his whole life. His daughter, his complications, his messy history. The question was whether she was brave enough to try. After the recital, they met Sophie backstage. She ran up to Ryan and threw herself at him with the kind of trust that came from knowing he'd always catch her. "Did you see me, Daddy? Did you see my turn? I saw everything. You were perfect." "I wasn't perfect. I messed up the ending." "You were perfect to me." Sophie pulled back and noticed Emma standing there. "You came. Emma came, Daddy." "I see that." "Did you like it? Did you think I was good?" Emma crouched down to Sophie's level. "I thought you were incredible. That turn at the end? I could never do that." "Really? Really? You're way more coordinated than I am. I can barely walk in heels." Sophie giggled, and Emma felt Ryan's eyes on her warm and steady. They took Sophie for ice cream afterward. Ryan's suggestion, though Emma suspected it was more for his benefit than Sophie's. They found a place that was crowded and loud and served portions that were definitely going to give Sophie a sugar rush. Sophie talked nonstop between bites of chocolate chip cookie dough, telling them about dance class and her friends, and the boy who ate glue, who apparently had moved on to eating erasers. "That seems worse," Emma said. "I know, right?" Sophie turned to Ryan. "Can Emma come to dinner this week, please?" Ryan looked at Emma. "That's up to her." "Please?" Sophie deployed the kind of pleading eyes that probably got her everything she wanted. Emma should say no, should pump the brakes, maintain boundaries, protect herself. Instead, she said, "What night works for you?" Sophie's face lit up. "Tuesday. We always have taco night on Tuesday, and Daddy lets me put too much cheese on everything." "Sophie, I don't let you?" "He totally does. And then he tells me not to tell my mom, but I'm telling you, so now you know his secrets." Emma laughed. "Good to know he's teaching you about appropriate boundaries." "I'm an excellent parent," Ryan protested, but he was smiling too. They walked Sophie back to Ryan's car, and when he strapped her into her booster seat, Emma watched the careful way he made sure everything was secure, the way he kissed the top of her head before closing the door. "So Tuesday," Ryan said, straightening up. "If you're sure." "I'm sure. Sophie's been asking about you for weeks." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And I want you there too, if that wasn't clear." "It's getting clearer." Ryan reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture so familiar it hurt. "We're going to figure this out, Emma. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But we're going to figure it out." Emma wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly it terrified her. "Okay," she said quietly. Tuesday. Tuesday arrived with a crisis at the restaurant. The walk-in cooler died, taking half her prep with it, and Emma almost canceled. But she'd made a promise to Sophie, and she kept her promises. She showed up at Ryan's apartment at 6:30, carrying a bottle of wine and her last functioning nerve. Sophie answered the door wearing an apron that said Daddy's Little Helper, and had clearly been used to wipe something tomato-based all over the front. "You're here! We're making tacos. Do you like tacos?" "Everyone likes tacos, except Madison's mom, who's on a diet. My mom says diets are dumb." "Sophie, let her breathe," Ryan called from the kitchen. Emma followed Sophie inside to find Ryan standing at the stove looking stressed. The kitchen, his beautiful professional kitchen, was a disaster. There was cheese everywhere. Actual everywhere. "So I may have let Sophie handle the cheese," Ryan said. "I can see that." In my defense, she has very strong opinions about cheese ratios. "More cheese is always better," Sophie said confidently. "That's just science." They made tacos together in the chaos of Ryan's kitchen, and it was messy and loud and nothing like the careful distance Emma had been trying to maintain. Sophie kept up a running commentary on everything, from why hard shells were superior to soft shells, to why her friend Madison was being mean again. "Did you tell her how it made you feel?" Emma asked, helping Sophie lay her cheese onto a tortilla. "No, I just ignored her." "That's one strategy. But sometimes people don't know they're being mean unless you tell them." Sophie considered this. "What if she gets mad?" "She might, but at least you told the truth, and if she's really your friend, she'll listen." "What if she's not really my friend?" Emma glanced at Ryan, who was watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Then you find better friends. People who treat you the way you deserve to be treated." Sophie nodded seriously like this was profound wisdom. "Okay, I'll tell her tomorrow." They ate dinner at Ryan's massive dining table, which Sophie insisted on setting with actual placemats and napkins, because Emma's fancy. "I'm not fancy," Emma protested. "You have a restaurant. That's fancy." "By that logic, the guy who owns the McDonald's is fancy too." Sophie giggled. "That's different." "How?" "Because McDonald's is gross. Your food is good. Daddy took me there for lunch last week, and I had the best grilled cheese ever." Emma looked at Ryan. "You came to the restaurant?" "It's a public establishment. I'm allowed to eat there." "You didn't tell me." "You were slammed. I didn't want to bother you." He took a sip of water. "But Sophie's right. Best grilled cheese I've ever had." "It had bacon in it," Sophie said reverently. "Who puts bacon in grilled cheese? That's genius." Emma felt her face heat. "It's not that innovative." "It's amazing," Ryan said quietly, his eyes on hers. "Everything you make is amazing." The moment stretched between them, loaded with things they weren't saying in front of Sophie. The little girl, oblivious to the tension, started building a taco tower that immediately collapsed. "Oops." After dinner, Sophie insisted Emma see her room, which was decorated in an explosion of pink and purple that made Emma's eyes hurt. There were dance trophies on the shelves, drawings tacked to the walls, and a concerning number of stuffed animals for one small human. "This is Butterscotch," Sophie said, holding up a bedraggled teddy bear. "I've had her since I was a baby. She's my favorite. She looks well-loved. Daddy says that's a nice way of saying she's falling apart. But I don't care. She's mine." Emma sat down on the edge of Sophie's bed, and the little girl climbed up next to her, still clutching Butterscotch. "Can I ask you something?" Sophie said. "Sure." "Do you like my daddy?" Emma's heart skipped. "Of course I like him. He's my friend." "No, I mean, do you like him? Like the way Prince Eric likes Ariel?" That's a complicated question, Sophie." "Not really. You either like someone or you don't." She tilted her head, studying Emma with those huge brown eyes. "I think you like him. You smile different when you look at him." Emma didn't know what to say to that. "I like you too," Sophie continued. "You're nice, and you don't talk to me like I'm a baby. My mom's boyfriend does that. He's annoying." "I'm sure he's just trying to be friendly." "He's trying too hard. Daddy says when people try too hard, it means they don't know what they're doing." Sophie hugged Butterscotch closer. "You don't try too hard. You're just normal. I like that." Emma felt something tighten in her throat. "Thank you, Sophie. That means a lot." "So you'll come back for dinner again?" "If your dad invites me, sure." "He will. He talks about you all the time, like all the time. It's kind of gross." Emma laughed, despite the tears threatening to spill over. I'll keep that in mind. When she came back downstairs, Ryan was loading the dishwasher, a task that clearly pained him after opening night, and trying to clean cheese off the counter. Sorry about the interrogation, he said. Sophie's not exactly subtle. It's fine. She's great. She really likes you. The feeling's mutual. Emma grabbed a towel and started helping. She asked me if I like you, the way Prince Eric likes Ariel. Ryan froze mid-scrub. And what did you tell her? That it's complicated. Is it? Emma set down the towel. They were standing close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, could smell his aftershave mixing with the scent of tacos. Ryan, I can't do this halfway. If we're going to try this, really try, I need to know you're all in, because I can't survive you leaving again. I barely survived it the first time. Ryan set down his sponge and turned to face her fully. I'm not going anywhere. I know I've said that before, but I mean it. I'm here, Emma, for however long you'll have me. What if it doesn't work out? What if we try and we're just wrong for each other now? Then at least we tried. At least we didn't spend the rest of our lives wondering what if. He reached out and took her hand. I've spent 12 years regretting letting you go. I'm not making that mistake again. Emma looked down at their joined hands. This was it, the moment where she decided to be brave or stay safe. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Okay, let's try. For real this time. Ryan's face transformed, and before Emma could second-guess herself, he pulled her close and kissed her. Not tentative like in the car, but certain, like he'd been waiting 12 years for permission to do exactly this. When they broke apart, Emma was shaking. I'm still scared, she admitted. Good. Me too. That means we're taking this seriously. They finished cleaning the kitchen together, shoulders bumping, hands brushing, the air between them charged with possibility. When Emma finally said she should go, Ryan walked her to the elevator and kissed her again, slower this time. Tomorrow? He asked. I have dinner service. After? Emma smiled. After? The next few weeks fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Emma worked the restaurant, Ryan managed his company, and they stole time together whenever they could. Late dinners after service, early morning coffee before meetings, Sunday afternoons when Sophie was with her mother. They took things slow, or at least they tried to. But there was nothing slow about the way Emma felt when Ryan showed up at the restaurant just to see her for 5 minutes. Nothing measured about the way he looked at her across a table, like she was the only person in the world who mattered. Lily noticed the change immediately. You're glowing, she said one afternoon, rolling into the restaurant during prep time. It's disgusting. I'm not glowing. I'm sweating. It's hot in here. You're happy. Don't deny it. You've been smiling at your phone all morning. Emma didn't bother denying it. Maybe. So you and Ryan are officially a thing? We're figuring it out. That's not a no. Lily wheeled closer. I'm happy for you, Em, really. You deserve this. Do I? Why wouldn't you? Emma set down her knife. Because I'm not sure I've forgiven him yet. For leaving, for all of it, and I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. Has he given you any reason to think he's going to leave again? No, but that doesn't mean he won't. Lily was quiet for a moment. You know what I've learned? From the accident, from everything? Life doesn't come with guarantees. You can do everything right and still get hurt. So you might as well take the risk on something that makes you happy. When did you get so wise? When my sister stopped being the only one allowed to give advice. Lily grinned. Besides, I like Ryan. He brought me those fancy chocolates last week. Anyone who brings me chocolate is good in my book. Emma laughed. That's a low bar. Hey, I'm simple. Chocolate and honesty. That's all I need. The conversation stuck with Emma over the next few days. Lily was right. There were no guarantees. Ryan could leave. The restaurant could fail. Everything could fall apart tomorrow. But it hadn't yet. And maybe that was enough. The real test came 6 weeks later when Ryan had to fly to San Francisco for a board meeting. It was only supposed to be 3 days, but 3 days stretched into 5 when negotiations got complicated. Emma tried not to panic, tried not to read too much into the delayed return. But by day 4, old fears were crawling back in. He's not coming back. He's going to stay there. He's going to realize his real life is in California, and you were just a temporary distraction. She was spiraling hard enough that Carlos finally kicked her out of the kitchen. "Chef, you're making everyone nervous. Go home. We've got this." Emma went home and immediately called Lily. "He's been gone 4 days," Emma said without preamble. "Okay? 4 days. And he keeps saying the meetings are running late, but what if—" "Emma, stop. Has he been texting you?" "Yes." "Calling? Every night? Apologizing for being delayed?" "Constantly." "Then he's not leaving. He's working. There's a difference." Lily's voice softened. "You're spiraling. I can hear it, but you need to trust this. Trust him." "I don't know how." "Then fake it until you figure it out, because the alternative is pushing him away before he even has a chance to prove himself." Emma knew Lily was right, but knowing and feeling were two different things. Ryan came back on day 6, showing up at the restaurant right before dinner service with flowers and an exhausted expression. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "The meetings were a nightmare. I tried to get back sooner. It's fine." "It's not fine. I told you 3 days and I was gone almost a week. I should have—" Emma kissed him, right there in her kitchen, with Carlos and the line cooks pretending not to watch. When she pulled back, Ryan looked dazed. "What was that for?" "For coming back, for texting me every night, for not making me wonder where you were or if you were coming home." "Emma, I'll always come back. I told you that." "I know, but my brain doesn't always believe what I know." She took a shaky breath. "I'm working on it." Ryan pulled her close, and Emma let herself lean into him, let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could actually work. "I'm working on it too," Ryan said quietly, "being better at communication, not disappearing into work, actually being present." He pulled back to look at her. "We're both learning." "Together?" "Together." That word settled something in Emma's chest. Together. Not her alone, not him fixing everything. Together. The following month brought new challenges. A kitchen fire that was thankfully contained quickly. A dispute with a vendor that almost derailed her supply chain. A scathing 1-star review from someone who was clearly having a bad day and decided to take it out on her restaurant. Through it all, Ryan was there. Not swooping in to fix things, but standing beside her while she figured it out herself. Offering advice when she asked for it. Washing dishes when she was short-staffed, reminding her to eat when she forgot. And slowly, carefully, Emma started to believe it was real. The turning point came on a random Tuesday in August. Emma was closing up the restaurant when Ryan showed up with Sophie, both of them looking nervous. "What's wrong?" Emma asked immediately. "Nothing's wrong," Ryan said. "Sophie has something she wants to ask you." The little girl stepped forward, clutching something behind her back. "So my birthday is next month. I'm turning 8, and I'm having a party with my friends, but I'm also having a family dinner." She brought her hands forward, revealing a handmade invitation covered in glitter and stickers. "I want you to come to the family dinner, not the friend party, because that's going to be loud and you probably don't want to deal with a bunch of 8-year-olds, but the family one." Emma took the invitation, her throat tight. "Sophie, I'm not family, but you could be." Sophie looked up at Ryan, then back at Emma. "Right? If you wanted to be?" Emma's heart stopped. She looked at Ryan, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "We talked about it," he said quietly. "About what it means to invite you to family things. Sophie knows what she's asking." Emma crouched down to Sophie's level. "Are you sure? This is a big deal. I'm sure you're important. To me and to Daddy. That makes you family." Sophie's voice was matter-of-fact, like this was the most obvious thing in the world. And maybe it was. Emma looked at this little girl who'd somehow worked her way into Emma's heart, and then at Ryan, who was watching them both with naked hope on his face. "I'd love to come," Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for inviting me." Sophie threw her arms around Emma's neck. "Yes, I'm going to go tell Madison. She's going to be so jealous." She ran off to examine the kitchen, leaving Emma and Ryan alone. "That was a setup," Emma said, standing up. "Completely. Sophie's been planning it for a week." Ryan stepped closer, but she meant every word. "You're important to both of us." "Ryan, I love you." He said it simply, like stating a fact. "I've loved you since we were 20 years old, and I'm going to love you for the rest of my life. And I know you're not ready to say it back yet. I know you're still working through trust and fear and all the complicated stuff. But I needed you to know. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You can't just say things like that. Yes, I can, because it's true. I'm a mess. I've got trust issues and control issues, and I'm probably going to panic and push you away at least 5 more times. I know. I'll be here anyway. Emma laughed through her tears. You're an idiot. Probably, but I'm your idiot, if you'll have me. Emma looked at him, this man who'd broken her heart and spent over a year proving he'd never do it again. This man who washed dishes and showed up and loved her daughter and somehow still found a way to love her too. I love you too, she said, and watched his face transform. I'm terrified, and I don't know how this is going to work, but I love you. Ryan kissed her then, and Emma felt every wall she'd built come crashing down. This was what she'd been running from. Not the pain of losing him, but the vulnerability of loving him, of letting herself want something so badly it could destroy her. But maybe destruction wasn't the worst thing. Maybe sometimes you had to break down the old structures to build something new. When they broke apart, Sophie was standing in the kitchen doorway, grinning. I knew it, she shouted. I told Madison you were in love. Sophie, we talked about eavesdropping, Ryan said, but he was smiling too. I wasn't eavesdropping. I was just standing really quietly in the next room. Emma laughed, and Ryan pulled both of them close. And standing there in her restaurant with the man she loved and his daughter, who'd somehow become hers too, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in years. Home. Sophie's birthday dinner happened on a warm September evening at Ryan's apartment. It was small, just Sophie, Ryan, Emma, Lily, and Sophie's mother, Michelle, who turned out to be surprisingly warm despite the awkwardness of the situation. So you're the famous Emma, Michelle said, shaking her hand. Sophie hasn't stopped talking about you. Hopefully good things. Mostly about your food and how you're going to teach her to cook. Michelle smiled. Fair warning, she's going to hold you to that. They ate dinner around Ryan's table, and it was chaotic and loud and nothing like Emma had imagined. Michelle told embarrassing stories about Ryan from their marriage. Lily hit it off with Michelle over their shared frustration with inaccessible buildings. Sophie opened presents and shrieked over each one, and Emma sat there watching it all, feeling like she'd stumbled into someone else's life. Except it was her life now. This strange, complicated, beautiful mess of people who somehow fit together. After dinner, after Sophie had blown out her candles and eaten too much cake, Ryan found Emma on the balcony looking out at the city. You okay? He asked. Yeah, just processing. It's a lot. I know my family situation is complicated. All families are complicated. Emma leaned against the railing. I was just thinking about how different my life is now. A year ago, I was barely surviving, and now I have a restaurant and a... She stopped. A what? I don't know what to call this. What we are. Ryan came to stand beside her. What do you want to call it? Emma thought about it, about all the labels they could use, all the ways to define what they'd built. I want to call it ours, she said finally. Whatever this is, however it looks, I want it to be ours. I can live with that. They stood there watching the sun set over Manhattan, and Emma felt something settle in her chest. Not certainty. She'd probably never have that, but something close enough. The restaurant continued to thrive over the next year. Emma opened a second location in Manhattan. She hired more staff, started doing catering, even got approached about a cookbook deal. Success felt different than she'd imagined. It wasn't some triumphant moment where everything suddenly became easy. It was 1,000 small wins punctuated by failures and setbacks, and days when she wanted to give up. But she didn't give up, because she'd learned that success wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up even when things were hard, about building something slowly, carefully, with people you trusted. Ryan proposed on a Tuesday, not some grand gesture in a fancy restaurant, just the two of them in her apartment, eating takeout on the couch after a brutal day at their respective jobs. Marry me, he said, setting down his container of lo mein. Emma stared at him. What? Marry me. I know it's fast, and I know we're still figuring things out, but I don't want to wait anymore. I want to build a life with you, officially. Ryan, he pulled out a ring box. I know you're going to say you need time to think about it. I know you're going to worry about all the ways it could go wrong, so I'm not asking you to decide right now. I'm just asking you to think about it. Emma took the box with shaking hands. Inside was a simple gold band with a single diamond. Not ostentatious, not trying too hard, just right. "You're serious," she said, "completely serious. You want to marry me. Even though I'm a mess and I have trust issues, and I'll probably make this harder than it needs to be. Especially because of that. Because you're real, Emma. You don't pretend to be something you're not. And I'd rather have complicated and real than easy and fake." Emma looked at the ring, then at Ryan. At this man who'd somehow convinced her that second chances were possible. "Ask me again in 3 months," she said. Ryan blinked. "What? 3 months? If you still want to marry me in 3 months, ask me again, and I'll say yes." "You're asking me to wait?" "I'm asking you to be sure. We've been together for a year. That's not that long in the grand scheme of things. I just want to make sure we're both ready." Ryan was quiet for a moment, then he smiled. "Okay, 3 months. You're not mad. How could I be mad? You just told me you're going to say yes." He pulled her close. "I can wait 3 months. I've already waited 12 years. True to his word, Ryan asked again exactly 3 months later, this time on the roof of a restaurant, with Sophie and Lily hiding behind the door trying not to giggle. "Emma Brooks," he said, getting down on one knee. "Will you marry me?" This time, Emma didn't hesitate. "Yes." Sophie burst through the door screaming, and Lily followed, and suddenly they were all crying and laughing, and Emma was wearing a ring that felt both foreign and exactly right. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony in Central Park. Nothing fancy, nothing extravagant, just their closest friends and family, Sophie as the flower girl, and vows they wrote themselves. Emma promised to try to trust him, even when it was hard, to let him help her, even when she wanted to do everything herself, to build a life together, messily and imperfectly and real. Ryan promised to stay, even when things got difficult, to communicate, even when it was easier to shut down, to love her daughter like she was his own. Wait, that wasn't right. They didn't have a daughter yet, but they would. 2 years later, when Emma found out she was pregnant and promptly had a panic attack in the restaurant bathroom. "I don't know how to be a mother," she told Ryan that night, "and I didn't know how to be a father. We'll figure it out together." "What if I'm terrible at it?" "Then you'll be terrible at it, and we'll deal with it, and our kid will probably turn out fine anyway. Look at Sophie. I've made a million mistakes with her, and she's amazing." Emma wanted to argue, but she was too tired and too scared and too overwhelmed. So she just held on to Ryan and let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd be okay. Their daughter was born on a snowy January morning, 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with Emma's eyes and Ryan's stubborn chin. They named her June, after Emma's mother. Sophie was obsessed with her new sister from day one, insisting on helping with everything despite being 11 and supremely unqualified. "I'm basically a second mom," she declared. "You're basically a kid who needs to do her homework," Ryan corrected, but he was smiling. Watching Ryan with June was what finally convinced Emma that they'd made the right choice. He was patient and gentle and completely terrified, which somehow made him perfect. "I have no idea what I'm doing," he confessed one night, holding June while she screamed. "Welcome to parenthood. None of us know what we're doing." That's not reassuring. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be honest. They muddled through those first few months the way all new parents did, exhausted and overwhelmed and occasionally wondering what they'd gotten themselves into. Emma tried to balance the restaurant with motherhood and failed spectacularly at both on a regular basis. But she was failing with support, with Ryan taking night shifts so she could sleep, with Sophie entertaining June when Emma needed to prep, with Lily showing up with food and terrible advice and unconditional love. This was what family looked like. Not perfect, not easy, but real. The restaurant expanded again. Emma hired a manager so she could step back, spend more time with June. She still worked the kitchen most nights, but she'd learned to delegate, to trust other people to care about her vision as much as she did. Ryan's company went public, making him obscenely wealthy in a way that made Emma uncomfortable until he pointed out it didn't actually change anything about their lives. "We were already comfortable," he said. "This just means we can donate more, and maybe buy Sophie that car she's already asking for. She's 13. She's planning ahead." They bought a house in Brooklyn, something with a yard for June and enough space for all of them. Emma kept her apartment above the original restaurant, turning it into an office and a place to escape when she needed quiet. Life settled into a rhythm. Not perfect, because nothing ever was, but good. Really, genuinely good. Emma was in the kitchen one afternoon teaching June how to make pasta from scratch while Sophie complained about her algebra homework when Ryan came home from work. He stopped in the doorway watching them. "What?" Emma asked, looking up. "Nothing, just thinking about how different things could have been. If you hadn't stopped at my food truck? If I'd stayed in California? If I'd been too scared to try again?" He came over and kissed her, flower and all. "I'm really glad I was brave enough to come back. I'm really glad I was brave enough to let you." Sophie made a gagging noise. "You guys are gross." "Wait until you're in love," Emma told her. "Then you'll understand." "Never happening. Boys are stupid." "Daddy's a boy." "Daddy doesn't count. He's old." Ryan pretended to be offended while June giggled and Sophie went back to her homework. And Emma looked around at this life she'd built, at this strange, messy, beautiful family, and felt something she'd never expected to feel. Complete. Not because she'd found someone to complete her, but because she'd finally allowed herself to be whole. The food truck sat in storage now, too dented and broken to be useful, but too meaningful to throw away. Emma visited it sometimes, running her hands over the peeling Golden Crust logo and remembering the girl who'd served coffee at dawn to make rent. That girl had been strong, had survived things that should have broken her, had built something from nothing because she was too stubborn to quit. Emma was still that girl. But she was also more now. A wife, a mother, a chef, a business owner, someone who'd learned that asking for help wasn't weakness, that love wasn't something to fear, that second chances were possible if you were brave enough to take them. She was standing by the truck, lost in thought, when Ryan found her. "Lily told me you'd be here." "Just visiting old memories." He came to stand beside her, looking at the beat-up truck that had started everything. "Think you'll ever use it again?" "Maybe. Sophie's been talking about a food truck for her Sweet 16. She thinks it would be cool. That's 3 years away." "I know, but it's not a terrible idea, full circle and all that." Ryan wrapped an arm around her waist. "You know what I think about when I see this truck?" "What?" "How lucky I am that I stopped here, that I was brave enough to walk up to that window and face you, that you were brave enough to give me a second chance." Emma leaned into him. "We're both pretty brave, I guess." "The bravest." They stood there for a while, two people who'd found their way back to each other against all odds, who'd learned that love wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up, even when it was hard, about choosing each other every single day. "Come on," Emma said finally. "We should get home. June has a recital tonight, and Sophie's going to be impossible if we're late." "Another interpretive dance recital?" "Ballet this time. Apparently it's more sophisticated." Ryan groaned, but he was smiling. 3 hours of 8-year-olds doing pliés? That's what parenthood looks like. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Neither would Emma. They walked back to the car hand in hand, leaving the food truck behind. But not forgetting it. Never forgetting where they'd come from or how far they'd traveled to get here. Because some stories didn't end. They just kept going, chapter after chapter, building something bigger than either person could have created alone. And Emma was finally ready to see where this story would take them. Together.